Welcome to Rock Your Reinvention, the show for high-achieving career women who refuse to settle for mediocrity and aren't afraid to take bold action. This is a place where you can authentically show up, where every dream and goal can be validated and achieved. Hi, I'm your host, Karen Freeland, a certified life reinvention coach, speaker, and award-winning author. I'm here to give you the tips, tools, and strategies to help you shift your mindset, build your confidence, and take meaningful actions so you can rock your reinvention. Ready to go from stuck to thriving? Let's go. Hello, and welcome to the show, Jess. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. Really happy to be here with you.
So Jess and I met through I like to call it a super secret author group, but I don't know how super secret it is, but it just makes me feel special. It's called Authoress, and we are both launching books in September. And when I saw what your book was about, which we'll get to in a minute, I was like, okay, I got to have you on my show. This is so perfectly aligned with our message and what all the women here that are trying to rock their reinvention are doing. So it was a perfect fit, and I'm so glad that you're in my world.
I agree. Yes, kindred spirits in terms of what we're focused on. So really happy to have this conversation with you.
100%. All right. Well, before I jump in and get to all the meat, can you just introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit who you are, where you're based, what you do, and maybe a fun fact.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jess Galica. I'm based in Boston, and professionally, I do two things. One is that I'm a go-to-market VP in tech. And then the second is that I'm a thought leader on women in work and author of the book Leap, Why It's Time to Let Go to Get Ahead in Your Career, and also do executive coaching. And I am also mom to two young kids. So I know the chaos of trying to manage all of the above. And some days feel like I'm succeeding and many days feel like I'm not, but love having professional pursuits and also really value being a present and loving mom.
Ah, I love that. There's the magic word. Love being a present mom, right? Like you can do it both, right? You can have the big aspirations and the dreams and go after the things that make your heart sing. And you can still put up boundaries and be there for your family and the people who matter most. I'm so excited to have this conversation because I think there's a lot of women who think that it's either one or the other. And I'm all about the life work harmony. I'm all about both.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't want to paint it to be too easy, right? I think there's always trade-offs, but for me, what really resonates is being intentional about those trade-offs, making intentional choices, because I think that's the best way to feel like you're succeeding and doing what you want is being really intentional about what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to.
Yeah, because it's not a sacrifice anymore when it's intentional. It's only a sacrifice when you feel like you have no control and like that's the only way that this can work.
Yeah, 100%. You're in the driver's seat. You're the architect. I think when you look at it from that place of empowerment and kind of building or painting the life that you've envisioned and you want, yeah, it can come much more from a place of kind of joy and openness and freedom. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Easier said than done, but it's work worth doing.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about your new book. And is this your first book? Remind me.
It is, yes.
Yay. Well, welcome to popping your book cherry.
Yes, so, thank you.
You're welcome. Leap, Why It's Time to Let Go to Get Ahead in Your Career. What inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, it really was born out of my personal journey with my career trajectory. And for the first decade of work, I was one of these people who had my head down. I was checking all the boxes. I was kind of pursuing what I would consider pretty traditional success. So I worked in startups. I went back to business school at MIT. I then went to management consulting at Bain, right? Collecting a lot of these gold stars along the way. And after a decade, before the pandemic broke out, it also happened to be the time that I was pregnant with my first child. I just kind of had one of these wake up moments. Like, how did I get here? And why does it still feel really empty and not what I imagined or hoped for? And I started poking around and talking to other people, and in particular women, who were asking these same kind of questions. Like, is this really what I want out of life? Is this really what I want to contribute in my career? And what I saw is that what I thought was this me problem of, oh, something's wrong with me. I haven't figured it out. I haven't cracked the code. I really quickly realized, wow, like every woman I know almost at this stage and this crossroads of career and life is struggling and consumed with these same questions. And that got me really fascinated of this topic of women at career crossroads, thinking about career inventions, how they navigate both an ambitious career, but wanting a full personal life. And long story short, led me to writing the book. And now, 3, almost 4 years later, here we are launching out into the world.
Yeah. And I love that you shared a couple of things. I mean, first of all, it's 3 to 4 years to bring this to fruition, right? Doesn't happen overnight. Anyone who tells you it does, he's trying to sell you something or lying.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. Oh, so much. I mean, I learned so much about the book writing and publishing process and all of that. And yeah, I mean, I wish I had known what I know now. But yeah, nothing is an overnight thing, right? And that's true of reinventions themselves. So yeah, it took a lot of work and a lot of time to get here, but that was a good learning too, that stuff doesn't have to happen overnight. And I think that really opens up possibilities for more types of women too, who maybe aren't those like impulsive risk takers of, now I'm going to snap my fingers and make a big, bold choice. Really, what I saw in my book is that people who are reinventing or making career changes, like these are year-long transitions for a lot of people. But what's cool about that is that it kind of makes it, you realize like anyone can do this. You don't have to be this wild, spontaneous person. Even if you're the most like risk averse person, there's a path for you to do it too.
Oh, for sure. And I appreciate you saying that you kept getting these check the boxes, but it felt empty. And I remember that feeling so, so well. I almost don't like to remember it just because of how hopeless it felt for me at the time. Just feeling like, oh my gosh, like, is this all there is to life? There has to be something more. This is like a cruel joke. And just, I didn't get it. I'm like, I thought I was supposed to be happy. I have the house, I have the car, I have the marriage, I have the kids, I have the shoes, the, $695 Salvatore Ferragamo shoes. Like, what the heck? Why am I feeling so empty?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's story is, of course, a little bit different. But what I found for all of the women who I interviewed the book is there are these really common themes that people feel. And I think one of the most common things that I realized is that it's hard to feel fulfilled or feel that fullness when you've been kind of pursuing a path that was meant for someone else and not meant for you, right? So if you're living out a career narrative that you sort of heard just growing up, right? Like lean in or opt out or whatever it is.
Right.
I think that all people, and especially women, can do a better job of really investing the time to I come back to this word intentional, be intentional about where you want to go and what you want to do. Because the reverse is that you wake up and you're like, wow, this is actually maybe not the path that I wanted to be going down.
Yeah. And I know you're a mom, and I'm so curious as how that has shaped your career journey and what role that played.
Yeah. Oh, immensely. It really has. Yeah. Becoming a mom had a huge impact on my career. And I think this is true for any parent, but I think it's especially true for mothers, what our expectations for mothers are, at least here in the US. I feel like when you become a mom, it's like non-negotiable that your perspective on career has to change. And that's in some great ways and in some ways that I wish would change. But for me, in the kind of great way of how it changed me is I had found something that I was so invested in, that I was so intentional about. I cherished this role as a parent. And when you experience that very purposeful, very fulfilling work, it makes you a little bit less tolerant of accepting less in other parts of your life. And so it becomes this foil to then look at the paid work that I was doing outside of the home and thinking, gosh, is this enough, right? Like your bar becomes a little bit higher because you experience sort of that higher level of fulfilling work. And then the harder thing too, right, is that it was a massive time investment, both the kind of traditional labor that I did inside the home, that sort of invisible labor that I was doing inside the home. It is challenging, I think, to be a working parent and caregiver, I'll say in general, but especially for moms, it is really, really hard to fit both of those things in. But yeah, it had a massive, massive impact on the way that I view my career in those ways in terms of time. But I will say it didn't make me any less ambitious. We hear that narrative a lot, right? Of like, oh, well, women are going to opt out of the workforce after becoming parents. And that was not true for me. And that's not true for a lot of the women who I interviewed for the book and who I work with. Women remain highly ambitious and highly motivated in developing really wonderful and fulfilling careers, but their ability to execute on that ambition becomes more challenging.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this because you had a really interesting post that I saw on your LinkedIn. So if anyone is not following Jess on LinkedIn, we'll definitely make sure we have that link below. But you talk about how ambition, it's kind of sometimes, well, I don't know that you said this, but when I read your post, I was thinking ambition is sometimes seen in a negative light, especially with women, right? With men, oh, if they're ambitious, that's fine. They're a go-getter. But if a woman is ambitious, she's too big for her britches, or she's bossy, or who does she think she is, right? There is just this negative connotation sometimes it's associated with it. So I'm curious, in the work that you do when you're coaching these female leaders, how do you help them really own that ambition and follow through on their big, audacious goals?
Yeah. I think there's two parts to it. I think there's the part of women connecting with their ambition and really setting that ambition. And then there's the second part, which you got at, which is more of this sort of executive coaching of, okay, well, how do you position that and how do you go after that in a corporate structure or any work environment? And when women are thinking about defining their own ambition, I think the most important thing to remind is that ambition isn't necessarily that one narrative or that one definition that we see in culture and society of some high powered corporate attorney or banker or whatnot. Sure, that's one version of ambition, but ambition is really about going somewhere. And that place that you want to go can look like anything to anyone, right? So your ambition might be, hey, actually, I want to find a way to work 15 hours a week and spend the other part of my life doing XYZ. So there are so many flavors of ambition that can exist. And I think the most important thing that you can do is get really clear on what ambition looks like for you.
Redefine what ambition means for you because you're right. I mean, I have no ambitions to work 24/7 like I used to work. That sounds terrible. I'll never, ever, ever do that again. Like my ambition today, it's a Tuesday. I started my day with a Bible study, 90 minutes, just to go and share fellowship with other women and be present with the Lord and uncover my faith. And that for some people probably is freaking you out right now, but like that is part of what I need in my recipe of a fulfilling life. And I've got the podcast and I'm publishing a book and you're doing a multitude of things as well. But nowhere in that does it mean that I'm going to sacrifice family, friends, vacations, things like that. Again, for some fake definition of what success looks like. So so
and
important.
another way to think about it that really resonated with me, I saw someone write recently this simple point of view, which is that bigger is not always better and better is not always bigger. And I think it's so easy to conflate those two things. But to your point, sometimes really what is the better choice can be slowing down or taking a step back or taking a step sideways or spending your time in different ways. And I think we've been so programmed to think that bigger is better, that it takes a lot of work and intentionality to get away from that narrative and to embrace this kind of bigger definition or bigger point of view on ambition and achievement and really what a successful life well lived looks like.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you are not driving or doing something where you cannot write something down, bigger is not always better and better is not always bigger. I mean, put it on a Post-it note, throw it up on your laptop or in your office or in your bathroom on the mirror, somewhere that you're going to see that every day. And I think that that is going to be like one small tip that could make a massive shift in your life if you started to adopt that mindset. Powerful. Thank you for sharing.
For sure.
So a lot of women that I work with in the coaching space, and I'm sure that you are talking to, want to reinvent their career. And it looks like you've done that a few times. One of the things that really stood out to me was that you were a consultant. And for those of you that have not worked with consultants, I mean, it can only be described as grueling from what I have seen when I was in the tech world. I mean, I remember we were in a war room for several months with a group of consultants, and they would fly in on a Sunday night. They would be there until Friday afternoon. And I do think a couple of times they may have slept in our office. I'm not even kidding. So I'm really curious if you had a similar experience and what led you to pivot and do something else. Like, was it just so grueling that it was like, oh, forget it. This is not what I signed up for?
Yeah. I mean, I think the burnout was definitely part of the reason that I left consulting
Hmm.
for sure. It is grueling, right? You're working with the biggest companies in the world, and just the way the business model is, they are paying consulting firms a lot of money. And so the expectations are really high. And that's just kind of the reality of the consulting world. And I think really any services based business. And so certainly part of it was just reclaiming a bit of my life back for sure. And I also think there was part of me that I had come from an operating background in growth stage companies. So I was really in it in terms of how companies are doing stuff, right? Like getting my
Hmm.
hands dirty, working cross functionally. And in a consulting role, you're an advisor. So you are a bit removed from the actual operations of the company. And I missed that energy a bit too, being in the thick of it and really having a direct impact on the business. So I think it was the combination of two things. It was, yes, absolutely the burnout. And I saw friends that were in quote, 9 to 5 jobs. And there's a vibe in consulting where you almost look down on that, right? It's your badge of honor, working so many hours a week and blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. But for me, I mean, I looked on those quote 9 to 5 jobs and was like, wow, how much life it would let me live, right? I mean, I looked upon them with envy. So that was a huge piece of it. But then also just feeling like I wanted to be a little bit more close to the impact. And so that was a piece of it as well. But I learned a ton from consulting. I don't regret that experience. It taught me a lot. I just didn't see it being a sustainable path for the long term when it came to my career.
Yeah, that makes sense. I felt similar when I was chief of staff for a tech company because it was very similar, grueling hours and all of that. And I was like, I mean, how long can someone do this for before you crack? So, if you could just share a little bit about how did you know you were experiencing burnout, or did you even know you were experiencing burnout? Were there signals that your body was sending you, or was it just a feeling? Because I think there's probably some people listening today that are wondering, am I burnt out? Is that why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think there's different kinds of burnout, right? There's that
Hmm.
very acute burnout where literally you are exhausted to the bone and feel like, oh, I can't stay up 1 more hour. And certainly I was experiencing that in consulting for sure. But I think for more people, there's kind of this almost emotional burnout where maybe it doesn't have to do with staying up until midnight or whatever it is, but there's just this emotional burnout of showing up to a job day in and day out where you're not being authentic to yourself or you're not able to show up as your whole self. I talk about this a lot as attacks in my book. Attacks for women, particularly attacks for women of color, where it's not just about showing up and doing the job. You have to be putting on a facade or putting on a
Yep.
mask to just literally exist and perform at work. And it is such a real tax. And it's exhausting, right? If day in and day out, you're having to not only do your job, but then kind of strategically manage and project and protect the way that you're seen, perceived, and show up in the workforce. At some point, you do get burnt out in that regard. And I'm curious, I think we're starting to see a bit more dialogue about that kind of burnout, but that's where I'm most interested to see because I think it's more
Hmm.
widespread that people feel like, gosh, I'm just feeling so disconnected, more mentally or emotionally exhausted with work. And I think we don't talk about that side of burnout enough.
Oh, I agree. And I think a lot of times then we propel ourselves as an escape into social media or other places. And then we see other people maybe living their best life. And I'm using air quotes, but I know nobody can see that because it's their highlight reel. And so we start to then second guess and judge and feel guilty that we're not doing whatever we want to be doing, but we don't know how to make a change. And it's just kind of like this vicious cycle that I think sends you further and further into that disconnectedness
Yeah.
where I don't know for you, but like the answer for me was really just to get quiet and to go inward and shut
Mm,
out the noise and get rid of all the clutter and the distractions in my life and go, why am I here? What was
yes.
I sent here to do? What is my purpose? So, do you have like a process that you used to go from that like burnt out, like, wow, what's next to actually figuring out your path?
Yeah, I feel like I keep saying the same thing, but it's because it's so important, which is
Yeah.
this word intentional.
Mhm.
I think it's actually really rare. Like when you're in a business, right? Say you're running some department or you're running a business. I mean, you come up with an annual strategic plan of your priorities, your key initiatives. These are the things that you, as a strategy, are choosing to say yes to. And inevitably, the rest you're saying no to. And I think for most women, we're not going through that exercise of really looking at, well, really anything in our life for the year, but certainly our work and saying, yes, this is what I'm saying yes to. And here's why, right? Here's the strategy. Here's what it means. And then here's what I'm saying no to. And I think that can lead people down that sort of spiral that you described of looking
Yep.
around and, well, shoot, people are doing that. People are doing this. We have no kind of underpinning to bring us back to this truth, this decision that we made. And so for me, that was kind of the most important thing that helped me to feel bolder in sort of taking steps towards reinvention and also not completely lose myself when you see someone doing something else that you're envious of or whatnot. It's just like coming back almost to this mantra or this like core thing, right? Okay, here's what I am choosing to prioritize right now. And also, here's why. And that helps me feel like the decisions that I'm making are good, sound decisions and not just reactive, like I'm just letting the world carry me through. It's that I'm making more active decisions. So I think it's that practice of intentionality and accepting that that means you got to let go of some things too.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I want to shift gears a little bit. I'm always curious. Did you decide to self-publish the book or traditionally publish? And why did you pick that path?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think the publishing world, it's so like hidden in a cloak, right? It's really hard
Yes.
to understand and learn about. And so I know so much more now. And I wish that I had known all of that when I was starting out. But I'll say, I think there are benefits to every form of publishing, right? I think with self publishing, there's much more speed to market. You have a lot more control, which is wonderful. Obviously, economically, right? You have more ownership over the end results. And then on the whole other end of the spectrum with traditional publishing, there's benefits too, right? You have that support team, you have the brand of the publishing house that you're working with. And so for me, what I chose to do again was sort of intentional. What am I prioritizing?
Yep.
What am I saying yes to? What am I saying no to? And for me, I wanted to find something that would give me a little bit of speed to market. Although you're laughing, right? Because we just talked about how I started working on the book almost 4 years ago. So surprise, surprise, everything took longer than I thought. But I did also want some kind of brand equity with the partner that I worked with and also a built-in team. So I went kind of the hybrid approach, which is I worked with Fast Company Press, which is affiliated with Fast Company that writes about business and tech. And I loved that because it did allow me a little bit more control over the end product, the end economics. And it also was a place where a lot of readers of mine I thought would be, right? There are a lot of women in business and tech who read Fast Company. So for me, I met somewhere in the middle and went kind of the hybrid approach of working with Fast Company.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's great because there are so many different ways to get your message to market. And so a lot of my audience wants to write books. They have a book on their heart. And so I always love to, like you
Yeah.
said, take the cloak off a little bit and start to bring it into the light so everyone can see that there is a path that would fit them.
Yeah, for sure. And what did you do? What path did you take?
Yeah, so I've self-published both times. With the second book that I Grab Life by the Dreams, I did start submitting to agents. And after about 3 or so months of submitting to agents and not getting a response, I was like, screw you. I don't need you anyway. No. But I just said, all right, hey, I put it out there. Maybe the universe is directing me not to go that path because I won't have the speed to market and I won't have the same control over it the way I will if I do it. And the universe knows me and I'm a Virgo and I like things my way. So I think it all ends up working out in the end. But yeah, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the decision now isn't a decision forever, right? So who knows? Maybe you would traditionally publish someday and maybe I would self-publish someday. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Hey, house, if you're listening, I'm manifesting this. I'd like to work with you. You got to put it out there, right?
I love it.
So we all have challenges and obstacles to overcome in life. I mean, it'd be great, right, if we didn't, although not really, because that's kind of how we learn and grow and become who we're meant to be. But if you had to say, what's one of the biggest things that you've had to overcome in your career and how did you get through that?
I think the biggest thing that I've had to overcome is really figuring out how to listen to myself as opposed to listening to other voices and other narratives out there about what good looks like. And that might sound so day one kind of stuff. Like, well, wait, can you not listen to yourself? But for me, this is not a skill, right? I will listen to everyone else in the room before I listen to my own inner voice, inner perspective, inner thinker. I think I've been really just conditioned in the way that I grew up and just maybe who I am and the world around me to often look to external validators and external signs of success that, my gosh, I really, really silenced and really, really suppressed and covered that person inside of me who really knows me the best. And I haven't become an expert on this even today, right? I think it's always a work in progress, but really continuing to test myself and hone that skill of tapping into myself and thinking, what do I really, really think about this? What do I really want versus all the noise that's around? So I always joke, right? Like you think about being in the driver's seat of your decisions or your life or your career. And it's like, I will listen to the backseat driver. I will listen to the taxi driver screaming outside the car. Like I will listen to anyone except myself to drive that car. And so that's gotten me some good places and some bad places, but I'm really trying to work on that moving forward in kind of this next chapter of life and work and everything.
Yeah. And I think that's a great action item for anyone listening. Like, what's one thing this week that you would traditionally ask somebody else for their opinion on? And how can you just make that decision yourself? Whether it's what you're going to wear to a party this weekend or what you're going to do for dinner. Like maybe you normally ask your husband, hey, what do you want? Or like whatever it is. What is one decision that you can just solely make and stand by it? Could be something at work, whatever it is. And build that muscle because it is a muscle. It is a work in progress.
100%. And the other way I kind of coach people on looking at it is if you have something in your life where you're saying, I don't know, right? The number one thing I hear from women when we talk about careers and trajectories is, I don't know what I want to do. And the one thing that I can say, no matter who that woman is, I don't need to know anything about her story, her background. The one thing that I can confidently say is, you know more than you're telling yourself.
Yep.
And so it's also this practice of when you encounter things in your life, when you say, I don't know, stop and let's question that reality, right? You know more than you are telling yourself. So dig deeper. What do you know? You might not know everything, but what do you know? And that can be a really kind of revolutionary thing for women because they really haven't given themselves the permission or the time to stop and think about that more deeply.
100%. I literally had a client in her first session. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. Sent her away with this exercise, right? Had a conversation about it. Comes back 2 weeks later for our next session. She's like, I signed up for a master's degree in art education. I'm going back to school and I want to be an art teacher. And I was like, well, you obviously knew some of this when we talked last time, because there's no way in 2 weeks you go from like legitimately having no clue to signing up for thousands of dollars of a master's program, right? But the answers are inside of all of us. We do know what we want. It just might seem a little scary, or we're telling ourselves we don't because we're trying to protect ourselves from change or any of that stuff.
Yes. I mean, there's nothing scarier than throwing out into the world that you do want to do something, because then you know that you want it. And what happens if you don't get it or you don't get after it? That's the scariest thing when you throw those things out into the universe, I think.
100%. Do you have a motto you live by any chance?
I have a motto that I aspire to live by.
That's perfect. That'll work.
Yeah. And it's actually framed in my room. It's one of these art frames that has a quote, and it says, you are exactly where you need to be. And I think I love that quote because it challenges me. I think I'm someone who is always feeling like, oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not where I need to be. And it reminds me that this life and career and everything is a really long-term journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Wherever I am, it's okay. That's exactly where I need to be. And you can have ambitions. You can have places and destinations that you want to get to, but just being present in the moment, I think, can not only be a happier way to live, but actually can be really strategic. And sometimes slowing down or taking a pause, we think of as holding us back. But what I see is that catapults women on a longer term trajectory that leads them to more success, more clarity, more achievement. But it takes that acceptance in the moment to do that and to not lead with insecurity or impatience or a rush. So yeah, you are exactly where you need to be. I aspire to live by that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. In the book, you said you interviewed people. So tell us a little bit about just like what's in the book, the structure of the book, so folks know when they go to order it, which I hope everyone is going to do that because you need this book. It's going to change your life. What are they going to find inside of it?
Yeah. So the book again is called Leap: Why It's Time to Let Go to Get Ahead in Your Career. And it's really a book for any woman who is feeling stuck in her career or questioning the next chapter that she wants, any woman who's at a crossroads and evaluating her career direction. And the book is structured in 3 parts. The first is actually all about the emotions that women experience navigating their careers. These are emotions that propel women into wanting a change, right? Things like I feel isolated in a male-dominated environment, or I feel frustrated that I'm getting passed up for promotion opportunities. It's the whole emotional journey that often leads women to be at this crossroads to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then the second part is more strategies and tools and tactics. So you're there, right? How do you get to that next place of having more clarity or executing that actual change or finding a way to thrive on the path that you're already on? And then finally, the last section of the book is about the results that come from women planning their careers more intentionally, applying these tools and strategies, and really pursuing a career that's more aligned and more strategic to who they are. And those are benefits like feeling more engagement and flow at work, actually achieving longer term success because you're locked in and you're locked in on the right track, and also having a bit more fun and joy along the way. So it's those 3 things: the emotions, the tactics and strategies, and then the benefits that come from it. And across the book, I always say women do not need another checklist. I think women are incredibly good at executing things. And so the whole spirit of the book, I'll say, it's kind of like a chicken noodle soup for the soul type thing, where really my goal is for women to feel seen in these stories and interviews. And yes, leave with something pragmatic and actionable, but ultimately I think stories are what motivate people the most. And so feeling that seen, feeling that community, that connection, and having that resonance to then kind of get in that headspace of, okay, I'm ready to look at my career and plan out this next chapter and move forward with confidence.
That's awesome. I'm so excited for you. I think this is going to be a huge hit. Where can people find you and learn more about your work and go get the book, Leap?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can find me Jess Galica, Galica. And then you can also find me and the book at theleapcareer.com. And the book is available for purchase at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and then some select in-person bookstores.
That's amazing. All right. I want to give you the last word. What's one thing that you would say to any women listening who know they want a change, but they don't know how to get started?
I would say invest in yourself. And that can look different for different women. That might mean investing literally in a coach or even a babysitter to free up time for yourself. And it also means just investing from a more emotional point of view. Believe that you deserve to prioritize your happiness, fulfillment, your ambition. Don't feel like you have to have any shame around wanting to put yourself first and prioritize this. Women are often in service of other people, but I would say invest in yourself unapologetically.
I love that. Wise words to go out on so that all of you can go rock your reinvention. All right, Jess, thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. And I will see all of you next time. Until then, stay fabulous.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're inspired to take action by committing to one of the tips or strategies we talked about in today's episode. And if you want accountability and support, I've got your back. Join my private Facebook group, Successful Working Women Rocking Reinvention, today. You'll find a community of like-minded women waiting to support you, exclusive content, and helpful resources to ensure you succeed. Lastly, if you loved this episode, do me a favor and be sure to leave a review. Together, we can encourage more women to live their purpose. See you next time.